Oh, I think he's actually there. But I don't think he's coming back. I'm so sorry. So let us now, we know who they all are, and we know what they've done today. So what I'd like you to, maybe Ron could start. If there are any questions to ask him about his play, I need to tell you that the play that you heard an extract from is actually at the back of his book that he has written. So if you'd like to get it and read the whole play, then please buy it. I know there are a few copies there. There are a few copies left.
Thank you.
Has anybody got a question for Ron about his play, about his career? Maritza.
Yes, please. Hi. I was highly amused and enjoyed listening to the play and wondered if you had been in contact with any schools, any drama schools, to perform it to the students there?
Well, actually, the play, because it's more like a sketch, I've been thinking about developing it within a context of an actual sort of a real kind of fully developed play. So I am currently using that material as the basis for a new play. It's set when David Garrick goes to create, he goes to Stratford-upon-Avon to create the first festival and is very disappointed about what he sees. And it's Halloween night and he gets hit on the head, there's a storm, and suddenly he wakes up and there's the spirit of Oxford and the spirit of Shakespeare battling it out. And so that's how all of this text will come out. And a friend of mine, I've written a musical with the composer in Scotland, and he read this and he said, you know, this might make a great musical. So I said, well, hey, go to it if you think so. So it probably will be developed more fully, and it's on my website for schools if they want to download it and so forth. But I do, actually in London, I've got 2 agents now looking at, I wrote a screenplay, and let me just give you a quick summary. No one, I don't know if this is gonna happen or not, but you may recognize this. When a group of eccentric and inept Cambridge University professors orchestrates a midnight break-in at Westminster Abbey to dig up what they believe to be Shakespeare's secret coffin hidden underneath his Poets' Corner statue, they must confront an ill-conceived kidnapping, unexpected night watchman, exploding bocce balls, and 2 shrewd police detectives. It is a comic story of intrigue, mystery, love, and an attempt to heal a broken heart, all to the tune of a Bee Gees soundtrack. So anyway, I'm hoping, and by the way, one of the professors, with permission, one of the professors who brings this idea to the attention of the other professors is named Professor Waugh. So who knows what will happen, but I think we need to get the story out to young people and in schools, and the way to do it, I think, using humor, or, you know, the reason I wrote my novel is because I thought, well, let's do it as a murder mystery, the solving of which just happens to reveal who the real Shakespeare is. I mean, ways like that, instead of just, you know, trying to do lectures about it. Yes?
Is it downloadable here in the UK or only in Spain? Your
Shakespeare
play.
scene?
Yeah, Shakespeare.
Well, it's in the appendix of my book, which is an ebook, as well as a paper. And yeah, I'm not sure if it's downloadable as the play itself online, but it's in Appendix 3. Appendix 2 is Professor Waugh's description of where the body is buried. And Appendix 1 is the John Rowland cipher of the Shaman's dedication. So I wanted to throw in a couple of puzzles for people as they read the book. Puzzle number 1, can you solve this riddle? Puzzle number 2, given this information about what's on the burial monument in Stratford, can you figure out where it's telling us where Shakespeare's buried? And then in the appendix, it reveals the answers to those. So trying to make it a little fun and interactive.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Yes?
Knowing that Mark Ireland's already been on the Shakespeare, were there any lines you wrote to the book around the war?
Mark who? Oh, I love Mark Rylance. Well, no, because first of all, I usually try not to read other people's works about the same topic I'm writing about, so that way I'm not going to be influenced at all. So I may have some of the same things that he's got in his play, but I can say, I have plausible denial. I didn't read it intentionally, but and I didn't want to be influenced by it. So, but no, because as a matter of fact, a few years ago, my group, the Oxford Shakespeare Company, presented All's Well That Ends Well at Castle Heading, and it was the year when Alexander and the group, I think it was a DBS meeting, maybe was held there, right? So you had the meeting, and I was asked to give my presentation, and then we did the play outside on the grounds. And I was terrified about giving my presentation because I'm not a researcher or scholar like many of you brilliant people. I just stand on your shoulders. And I think my job in life is to take your work and try to make it fun and accessible and so forth and dramatic somehow, because that's my background. So when I got up and I said, well, Mr. Waugh, you're a lot of what I'm talking about comes from you. And he said, no, go ahead, we'd love to see it. So I did it, and then he said, this was great because even though we may have known a lot of the material, we now know a new way to present it. And so you don't have to be shy about, taking the same material that other people did. There's only so much material out there that we could use, but we all express it differently, right? It's like that's the great thing about Shakespeare, is he expressed every idea and every human ever had, but he did it better than any of us can do it. Right? So he can retell the Oedipus story, but he does it in his way and makes it so beautiful. So, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. More Charles, would you like to?
Oh, I just think because everyone's heard me a lot today, I was going to nominate my son James instead.
No. I think you should start, Charles. The trend is taking us to making Shakespeare very different, both culturally and sexually very different.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's people are mooting the idea of a transgender into the people playing the parts.
Yeah.
Do you think that adds to the play itself?
Well, I'm going to be rather controversial because I love Mark Rylance, but for example, when I went to see his 12th night with the all-male 12th night, I didn't like it, and only because if it were done in a museum to show us how it was done back then it makes sense. But because I think when Vere was thinking about Juliet, he was thinking about a girl, not even though he had to use boys to play girls. So I think it just takes away some of the original intent of the play, or it distracts us. And so I'm not a big fan of all-male productions, just like I was asked once to do a production. It was the first off-Broadway production of a Shakespeare play done in OP, original pronunciation. So we had a voice person came in and told us how to speak like they think that the Elizabethans spoke. We did a production of 12th Night, and I was Festin, and the problem was, my first question when he asked me to do it, I said, so in other words, we want to make Shakespeare even more difficult to understand. Is that what you're saying? He said, no, there's something about it, it's just magical. And so I wasn't sure if I would do it. And then he said, I'll pay you. And I said, okay, I'll do it. And so we did it. And we all ended up basically sounding like a bunch of drunken Irish pirates. So, but I don't think it added. I kind of got, there was one joke because of the new rhyme. I got a joke. It's something about when he sings "lovers meeting," and the way it would have sounded back then was "lovers mating." So that was the one joke I got from 2 hours of torture to the auditor. So I'm just one of those old-fashioned guys. I don't even like to change the setting of the play unless there's a good reason you can justify it. You know, if you change it, so many directors change Shakespeare because maybe they're not very good directors, and they don't trust. They don't trust the material. He's pretty good. So just do it Elizabethan and have fun with it. Well, but if you want to change it to 1930s gangster Chicago, okay. But there better be a good reason to do it that way. I mean, that's just me. You know, I'm kind of a purist when it comes to that because I want to go and hear. Most of my productions, we don't do elaborate costuming, unlike what we did today. And, you know, or sets or anything, we perform a lot outdoors. So audiences tend to tell me, you know, what we liked is that this minimalist kind of thing because we heard the words and we saw the characters and we weren't distracted by all of the glitz and so forth. I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, sort of that. I mean, we discussed a couple of days ago, there was a production of The Tempest with Sigourney Weaver playing Prospero.
Yeah.
And it sort of unbalanced the play because the play is primarily about the relationship with her father and his daughter. The difference in sexes, there was only one woman on the island, and that was the daughter. And is there traction anywhere there in the future with the
Well,
play?
she's, and Sigourney played it as a female, a Prospero, a female. And that, yeah, the problem is, and we're all afraid to say it suddenly, but a father is different than a mother. And the father's relation to the children is different than the mother's relation to the children. And there are these inherent differences. And so I often have a lot of women playing male parts, but I have them play them as males.
Mm-hmm.
We don't change the gender. And I mean, when we do shows, the auditions, there are many more women than men. I mean, that's why I got into theater in the first place. I was a young teenager and I said, no, there's a lot more women here. I have a better chance now. So because there are more women, and of course with Shakespeare, there are more male roles, then then I have women playing the male roles. And all I do is I say, don't imitate a man, but just have whatever it means to you, a male attitude, and just play that attitude. And it always works. And after the first minute, the audience forgets about that. They forget. But if you've got Prospero suddenly being the mother rather than the father, I don't think it works because that's not the relationship that Shakespeare wrote about.
What did the other members
Agree? Yes, they agree.
There's plenty of gender diversity in the plays anyway.
Or do a play about gender diversity. I don't think Shakespeare's plays are about gender, really. They're about human relationships, and I don't think he's commenting. That's a very modern. We talk about it today, but I don't think they were going around 400 years ago talking about gender. But there's all this the disguise.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
But it's not I don't think it's like I have a woman in me that wants to come out. No, it's like I gotta pretend I'm a man because it's safer in this world to pretend like I'm a woman. So I think we can overcomplicate it with our modern sensibilities. And that's what professors do. I was one, I'm recovering. But, you gotta come from that. You have to. What's that?
Some.
Some, yes, that's what did I forget? Yeah. Some. Yeah.
My take on it is influenced by going to see the Lord Chamberlain's Men, who tour, particularly southern England, every year. and they'll always, I think they've just done As You Like It, no, 12th Night they've just done. And it's on a simple stage, and it's normally 6 men or 7 men, and they all do multiple roles. And I find it fascinating to watch it because of everything that Shakespeare was playing with they're nearly all boys essentially dressing up as girls. You spend half the play dressed up as boys.
Yes.
It's wonderful when you watch them, and they're about to tour the States actually. They're in the Eastern States, the Royal Chamberlain's Band. So I suppose maybe it's down to how they're produced.
Yes.
But it really does bring across to me how it would be to Shakespeare's audience really, and why he played it the way he did.
Right.
Shakespeare does have a Cleopatra complaining that he actually turns the word boy into a verb, that her greatness will be boy. So I totally agree with what you said about his imagination. He did not write those female parts for boys to play. He knew that boys would play them,
Right.
but he could see ahead of the time when women would play them.
And he went to Europe where there were women actresses on stage. So, yeah.
I thought Roger was going to make a new revelation that Cleopatra complained that her beard was itchy.
Only in rehearsal. Only in rehearsal. And congratulations. I've known Roger since before he was a doctor. And now he's a doctor, and I know because he's asking about my gallbladder. He's a doctor.
Any questions? A gentleman over there.
Couple of questions. One of the general questions is why do you think a man wrote such good women parts? When to flatter the Queen, you're a really clever woman, and you're all the women.
I think he was unusually attuned to female experience, much more than most men then or now. And so I'm sure he wanted to please the Queen, so that's of course an aspect of the performance situation. But I think, I would imagine that as a boy, he already liked dressing up and playing female parts. That, to me, makes sense. And of course, that would have contributed very much to his reputation as being, for beyond the pale. Do something like that.
And he was surrounded by powerful women.
Yeah.
Yes.
Brilliant Mary, who is probably Kate, right? I mean, he knew
Yes.
smart, accomplished, literate women.
What's interesting, because Queen Elizabeth and Burleigh's wife, I mean, they were all brilliant women. So he knew all these brilliant women. But what's interesting is he does not write many mothers. So that tells us also, because we know he had a difficult relationship with his own mother. So he's writing all these brilliant independent women, but it's usually fathers and their daughters.
It wasn't just Elizabeth, he had a whole circle of women who were really also very clever.
Yes.
But also her best mates.
Yes.
Especially if we believe she was virgin.
What?
Yeah. Especially if we believe she was a virgin.
Virgin.
She would have
Now, of course, back then, virgin also just meant unmarried.
Yeah.
So,
But she was very cross when her ladies played her. That's for sure.
oh, yes. Yes.
I think you had to press them to press her to the, like the entertainment for them.
Yeah.
For herself.
That's true.
And it also was
There's
second
something
question.
about that.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry. I mean, not you.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Yes.
a specific question for Roger. Although I want to say firstly, congratulations. Fantastic. Can't think of a better person to get this award. So, well done. When do you think the annotations were written? I know each of them will have been, can't be earlier than publication date. But you mentioned several times dissimulation, which goes hand in hand with equivocation as the Catholic strategy
Right.
of avoiding being found out not to be complicit, yeah? So was it a Catholic that wrote them? And when do you think they were written?
Well, the Audley End books, the most important of the Audley End books are all published before 1551. And one important fact that I did not mention about them is that from the very beginning, starting with Dionysius' Antiquities of Rome, which deals with the earliest period of Roman history, all the way through Cassius Dio, which comes up to about the 1st or 2nd century of the Christian era. There is a concerted emphasis on legal aspects. There are probably 50 different specific Roman laws that are annotated and lots of concepts of law. To me, that suggests the high probability that they were actually made in the late 1560s or early 1570s as part of his training at Gray's Inn. Now, if that is true, it means that they, in my opinion, that they would predate the writing of the plays to which they specifically most concern. Ultimately, I don't think we can have a really scientific answer to that question. So that is simply my impression. They could be wrong, he could have made them much later, but they look to me like the notes of a young law student, albeit one who is already putting together in his mind his interest in what became those two plays, and beginning clearly to map out some of the most important dramatic elements. So if that's true, then a play like Antony and Cleopatra, he had been thinking about probably for 25 years before we get the play that we have.
I also do think there are common themes that the Elizabethans would have known means, since we know Mickey Mouse and we know.
Oh, yes.
Then, for them, it was the two traitors, because we have the daughter of the manuscript, which I think is the red herring, but there you go, on the two bad guys that are on Shakespeare. I can't remember their name.
What plays are you talking about?
The two tractated one.
Yes.
And the other one
the 6 plays.
the Welsh Intender.
Yeah.
They were, in my view, a meme of the Tudor age of Caesar. And therefore, George and Alfred wrote it in talking the sound like, it's for us to have predicted, for us that any technical theory. I think also that, Cleopatra, because Shakespeare wasn't the only one that did that. Mary Sidney did
Correct.
Cleopatra. Didn't someone else say that?
Well, there are several Cleopatra plays on the continent in the mid-16th century, and there's a really excellent analysis of them by an Italian scholar named, her last name is Bigliazzi. And one of the fascinating things, she says that these other plays focus on, Julius Caesar focused on a kind of binary struggle between Brutus and Caesar. And that what Shakespeare did differently is, first of all, to elevate the role of Mark Antony, to triangulate that relationship. And secondly, he places much greater emphasis on the dramatic role of the people in history and in the play. And she says he got these things from reading the historical sources in a way that other playwrights did not do. And both of those emphases are very prominent in these annotations. There are 79 annotations of Mark Antony, and there is one that states the power of the people. So the annotations correspond to what we are told Shakespeare's dramatic innovations. And treason is also a repeated motif. Treason is one of the crimes that he is most interested in, precisely because it is about symbolism and perception. What is treason anyway? That is one of the most difficult legal concepts to really try to define or understand. and he knows that.
Roger, I actually have a question, and maybe you touched on it and I missed it, which is not unusual, but anticipating what your critics might ask you, how many other writers of the period, their handwriting did you compare? You're showing us, this looks like De Vere's annotation, but did you compare other, I assume you compare other people's?
Oh, absolutely. That's a very important part, of course, of any investigation like this. When Shelley and I were at the British Museum the last time we were here at the British Library, we photographed as many contemporary italic hands as we could in those documents. And so that is something that will be very useful going forward to, indeed. Modern forensic analysts who work with handwriting like to look at all of the possible variables. That includes all the letters, all the combinations of letters, and of course, when they are available, other examples of contemporary hands that are similar. As we all know, we start off with the basic distinction between italic handwriting and secretary handwriting. It is extremely unusual in the records that I have seen, and Professor Nelson stated this to me some years ago. De Vere is practically the only person who writes in English in an italic hand. The only other cases where you see an italic hand by English writers is in a signature. The letter will be written in secretary hand and the signature will be in italic. Yes, most of the italic hands that we saw are writers in France or Italy, writing to Burley and other, English correspondence.
Well, you mentioned yesterday, there are some publications that have actually addressed handwriting styles in tutoring.
Yes.
I'm trying to remember the name of this.
Well, the best book is Fairbanks and Dickens, the Cambridge Italic Hand. It includes facsimiles of probably about 30. The italic hand came into England through Cambridge. And so in that book, probably the person who taught Oxford how to write, if it wasn't Sir Thomas Smith, is probably one of the people in that book. We're not sure who, but that's it, and it was pretty new, in the 16th century, and it didn't last very long. It's really, by the time you get to the 1590s, Oxford's handwriting was old-fashioned.
Any crazy questions? Sir?
Matthew, how or why did you become a forger?
Well, the how is quite easy. My father gave me a copy of Loney's book when I was 15. I didn't fully understand all of it, and I then sadly put it back on the bookshelf and didn't do anything about it for the next 40 odd years. And the why is because I'm a seeker of truth. My father was, and I'm determined to get to the truth and tell people that. Thank you. Thank you.
I just wanted to say, I asked Brent this morning about why the name. Because one of the things that's been sort of extraordinary with me today is here we are at the Vere Society talking about the Earl of Oxford, and yet because you are all so convinced that it's one man and not the other man, you've all openly called him Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Because that's not Shakespeare.
That's right, that's right.
And any thoughts on that? Or just ownership?
Well, I think it depends which audience you're talking to. And from the talk that Brent and I gave earlier about the narrative, that's aiming for people who are uninitiated into this, who've never even heard of the authorship question. And that is probably a bit confusing for them if we say, well, Shakespeare was Oxford. So we just wanted to be very clear in that document what we're talking about. And we do talk about the Shakespeare a little bit in the questions. But amongst ourselves as a community, I think it probably is like any, there'll be a trend. And maybe everyone's been calling De Vere for many years. And in the States, I don't know whether lots of people called De Vere, or whether it was Oxford. And I don't know, just for me and my generation, it feels like Oxford is an easier name to cope with in all of this. There's a right answer, or, but that's
And Ron, on the cover of your book, where you equated Stephen Fry, isn't it?
Yes,
Did he really say that?
yes.
Shakespeare in his life.
Oh, I have a long email from him. I had invited him to do a master class in New York, when he was in New York. And Sir Derek's done some of the master classes for it. Whenever a great actor's in town, I'll grab him to do a master class, or her, Glenda Jackson and all these wonderful people. Well, so I asked him, and I gave him a little DVD of my presentation, not realizing that would spark a very long email telling me about how he got A's in Shakespeare at whatever the university, Cambridge or Oxford, whatever it is, and because he was doing the play with Mark Rylance, who is a questioner. So, and he said, I don't understand how Mark or Derek or anyone can think it was anyone other than the Stratford man. And so and he talked about how it was just preposterous and snobbish, because we're snobs, right? And because only an aristocrat can write this stuff. And so I thought it might be funny to include I have a lot of quotations and a lot of wonderful blurbs from people who support the theory, from Richard to Keanu Reeves. But I thought it'd be fun to include Stevens as well. And he doesn't know about it yet. You may find out.
Are you not saying that in the record?
I should send him if we could. No, he'll have a heart attack. Based on the tone of his email, he'll explode. Yes, so let's not tell him about it.
I don't know the other one.
Can I say something about changing the name? I mean, it sort of undermines everything that we're all doing, because we need both names. They need to understand it's both names. I know that for newbies that's okay, but if we keep changing the names, now we have to use Oxford.
Oh,
I'm never going to
Oxford
use
and
Oxford.
Vere. Yeah, I use them interchangeably, but when I talk about the writer of the works, I always say Shakespeare, because that's what Oxford wanted us to call him. Except, I think he developed a joke name, Will Shakespeare. It's a joke. And there was this guy, Will Shakespeare, and I think at some point he said, you know what? I think the Queen, remember the plays came out anonymously at first. Most of the big plays were anonymous for years. And then suddenly a name has to be attached. So I think Queen Elizabeth went to Vere and said, look, Eddie, I want you to add a name to these plays, because if there's any suspicion that these plays are being written by a court insider, which obviously they are, because you're writing about the court, that's all you care about, then I want a name that's not associated with the court, with any of us, and I don't want your name on it. So he says, okay, I'll satisfy the Queen's request of using some fake name, but it'll be such a joke name that everybody will know. Will Shakespeare. By the way, put a hyphen in there so everyone will know it's a joke. And I think what happened was, as he kept writing, he became so brilliant, and he realized he was becoming so brilliant, that I think that's why he said, I'm going to scatter hints throughout the works that it's me. You know, he puts in the sonnets every word that almost tell my name. Well, every word is an anagram for Edward Vere. It almost tells his name, but for one letter. So I think he wanted to throw those hints in. I'll write about the time that I did this, and the time I was kidnapped by pirates. There's nothing in the source material Hamlet that talks about being kidnapped, but it happened to him. So he says, for those in the know, I'll put in all these hints, so everybody will. There was an open secret at court. Everyone knew, and he was writing a new play to make fun of us. But I think she didn't want her the court's
That was
dirty
what I
laundry.
was asking. That was what I was asking. I was asking about changing it from to.
Why don't you leave them? That's a question.
I was asking about Oxford and the beer, and you went on Shakespeare, and I wasn't talking about Shakespeare.
Or, no, but I did answer. What I said was I used to be interchangeable.
Difficult to change it from.
It's difficult in America because when I was writing my novel, actually, I would use Burley and then Cecil. Or I would use Lester and then Dudley. And my publisher said, you gotta pick one. Because Americans won't, your readers, they're not gonna know that it's Dudley. If you call him Dudley here, and then you call him Lester, they're gonna be confused. And by the way, get rid of some of these Henrys. There's a lot of Henrys. So I said I could change this Henry to Hugh, and this Henry is Hank. And so I did the best that I could with that. But yeah, the names, I think it's okay to use both De Vere and Oxford, but not in America.
And I know you didn't ask this question, but I don't think that the librarians would be very happy if we insisted that they replace the name Shakespeare with either De Vere or Oxford. So I think we've got that, and what we need to be pursuing is, well, what biography do you attach to that name? You attach the biography of Edward De Vere, also AKA the Earl of Oxford. And that doesn't necessarily solve the problem, but I think that's a realistic way to proceed.
And they have to get used to, we have to stop calling the Stratford man Shakespeare, because it was Shaxford. So if we can get used to Shaxford, there's no E there in the middle. So if we could just keep calling him Shaxford.
What do you think of just calling him Will Stratford?
Stratford man.
Okay. Well, not a first name fixes.
I don't think we should denigrate things.
Kevin's got a question.
I absolutely agree about calling Will Stratford.
Will Stratford.
Because when you look at it, if someone's reading with their eyes,
Yeah.
Shakespeare and Shakespeare look very, very similar. You can sort of see a shape of
That's
the word and move on. So I think to try and dissociate the person who came from Stratford from the immortal works that are under the name of Shakespeare, I think it's very important that we actually say Will of Stratford.
That's it.
Kevin, don't you think man of Stratford is a little denigrating a little bit majority?
How about the idiot from Stratford? The oak, the lout. Sir?
Surely Shakespeare is an obvious obscenity.
Excuse me? The name Shakespeare? Oh, I see. I see. I only got that because of Shelley. She indicated it. I see. Well, and it's Palacidina, and it's apparently they had a jousting. When the joust would take place, they'd be chanting, Shakespeare, Shakespeare, break a spear, break a spear. So Shakespeare was all over the place. It was a guy who shacked corn or hay or whatever, too. That's where the name originated, was a shacksper was someone who shacked.